I want to talk to you a little bit about family and faith, because in your opening statement and the people who introduced you to the committee, there was very glowing praise of you as a person, a good friend. You have a wonderful family. You should be proud, and your faith matters to you. What faith are you, by the way?
Senator, I am Protestant.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Non-denominational.
Okay. Could you fairly judge a Catholic?
Senator, I have a record of
I think the
fairly
answer would be yes.
judging everyone.
I believe you can. I'm just asking this question because how important is your faith to you?
Senator, personally, my faith is very important, but as you know, there's no religious test in the Constitution under Article 6, and
there will be none with me.
And it's very important to set aside one's personal views about things in the role of a judge.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I believe you can. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how faithful would you say you are in terms of religion? You know, I go to church probably 3 times a year, so that speaks poorly of me. Or do you attend church regularly?
Well, Senator, I am reluctant to talk about my faith in this way just because I want to be mindful of the need for the public to have confidence in my ability to separate out my personal views.
Well, how would you feel if a senator up here said, your faith, a dogma, lives loudly within you, and that's of concern? How would you feel if somebody up here on our side said, you know, you attend church too much for me, or your faith is a little bit different to me, and they would suggest that it would affect your decision? Would you find that offensive?
Senator,
I would if I were you. I found it offensive when they said it about Judge Barrett. The reason I ask these questions is I have no doubt that your faith is important to you, and I have zero doubt that you can adjudicate people's cases fairly if they're an atheist.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. I just gave you a short, I happen to watch a lot of this, I don't know what to call it, investigative reporting? I mean, what is this? How is that to speak to anybody of her stature? And mind you, we have a white supremacist talking to an elegant black woman. I mean,
feeding red meat to the
I
rednecks. That's what he's doing.
And the lack of being a gentleman. I mean, was he questioning her like that about her faith? How many other judges of her stature has he questioned like that? Where does he get the nerve? Is it white supremacy? I mean, what is that? I mean, I want to go bust him in his jaw for being disrespectful. Because if she was any kin to me, I would meet him outside. Right. I mean, I just took such an offense to that.
You took umbrage to it. I mean, you're talking about the senior senator from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, and he's been there quite a bit, and he's sort of all over the place within that, you know, standard issue Republican side to the far right. 1 minute he's supporting Trump, the next minute he wasn't. Now he's fully, you know, a Trumpian fellow. And I thought today, you know, Wednesday, 23 March 2022, when he's speaking to this a nominee for associate justice position in the High Court, Supreme Court, he's asking her about her faith. I thought that was so inappropriate and bizarre.
Of course it is.
And and I don't know where he was going with that. It's just, I mean, his behavior is slightly less worse than Ted Cruz's behavior today in that confirmation hearing. Just absolute bizarre. She's a shoo-in, apparently. Even one of the Democratic senators said that on the record, and during the confirmation hearings. She's largely a
So
shoo-in.
why are they
have the
doing
votes. They have the votes to put her in.
Why are they doing this?
I think it's performative art. I mean, what else can you?
It is headlines, and to some folks it's
Yeah.
And they're
entertaining.
choosing to get on her about
And it's election year, and some of them are
child pornography.
prepping for 2024, presidential runs.
You know what it is. Let me lead you into this. You know QAnon. A lot of the QAnon people are for, the theory of QAnon, what they believe.
It's complete madness. I don't know if they know what they believe.
They believe that Democrats are taking babies and sodomizing them. And this is
It's
their
hard to
belief.
take that
Actually,
There's
I didn't think that, but yeah, that's
no,
part
but
of
this is
the
what
that's
his
part of the
approach
QAnon.
is. This is who he's appealing to. Accusing her of not going soft on crime, but going soft on people who
On their morality.
Well, it was
babies
the cases that came before her
child
regarding the child
pornography.
pornography cases. That was Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz,
But they're
Texan.
catering to the QAnon crowd.
Right, I didn't make that connection. Yeah, that's
But
interesting.
that is
could
the
be.
connection.
That probably jacks up the ratings for several television stations.
That's it.
It makes lots of headlines, and as such, it is beneficial. If I could blather on and on and on and on, and I know my buddies are going to make money, that's reason enough for me to grab that microphone. Because my buddies are going to make money. Not only that, but they may tell their friends, and then their friends will tell their friends, and before you know, you have a cadre of people who say, you know what, let's vote for the Republicans, they're the only sane ones. And that's the nonsense that's being done.
I present this to you to make you aware that we do have a dog in this fight. I mean, a lot of us will bypass this stupid cracker, or call him, but he's smart enough to appeal to his base.
Midterm elections are coming up.
Exactly.
Ding, 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 ding.
We're forgetting about voters' registration, all the nonsense going on there. The war is taking us away from this. Putin and his garbage, who influenced our 2016 election. He was behind it all, but I argue with a lot of my co-hosts and my friends about whether the Russians were involved with that.
Well,
All the Hillary haters say that the Hillary didn't deserve the presidency.
I mean, there's sufficient reason to believe that Putin and his henchmen had interfered with that election. There's sufficient reasons to believe that.
17 agencies.
Yeah. I mean,
But-
I don't think people. I don't
you
think too many
remember
people are
Helsinki?
dismissive of that.
Remember Helsinki and Trump and Putin standing there,
Sure.
and Trump
At the
claiming that
gathering.
it
Was
might
it in
not have
Helsinki or
been
was it in?
Putin?
Was it with the meeting that they had when Trump was president there? Was that in Helsinki, right? Or was it Reykjavik?
Yeah.
Helsinki. Okay.
well,
Finland. Yeah.
Trump refusing to come out and condemn the actions of Putin is not something that should surprise any of us. Trump positioning himself for another run at the White House is not something that should surprise anyone. We being lackadaisical, we being maybe a little bit lazy and naive, when I say we, I'm talking about those people who have had opinions averse to Trump. We did not take him seriously enough. We thought he was a clown.
Yeah.
But
he
that
is.
clown is not so funny if he's carrying AK-47 across the Ukraine and murdering people. But we kind of thought Donald Trump was a clown, and therefore we shouldn't spend a lot of time on him. The results are coming back to haunt us, that we were not
That's
serious
right.
enough in our opposition. We were
That's
not
right.
organized enough in our opposition to Trump and his followers. Again, the midterms are coming up. Trump's followers are gaining leverage. They're becoming more vocal. They're daring to say things that they wouldn't have whispered 5-6 years ago. So
Right.
we have to be alert to the fact that some of that culpability rests on our shoulders, that we weren't alert enough to the nonsense that was being done behind the curtains and how it threatens us.
So how do we approach this factor now?
so many factors. Which one are
The
you
factor of
referring to?
us being wrong about Putin and Trump, not paying enough attention to what we were doing, and hating on Hillary.
Well,
That's the biggest
clearly we
problem.
can't do anything about the past. I mean, that 2016 election happened. I would, my response would be a little more nuanced than Owen's is. Mr. Rogers sitting next to me. I just, you know, he did lose the popular vote, and Joe Biden did win by 8 million, nearly 8 million votes. So, and if you want to continue that analysis, I mean, Donald Trump did get more votes than anybody else in the history of presidential elections.
Other than Joe Biden.
Other than Joe Biden, of course, who got 8 million more votes than he did. So it's
But
it's
74 million people
a
voted for Trump?
large amount of people.
That's
that
scary.
that's the reality.
Those people
That's
are
the
still
country.
buying guns.
And a
Those people are
third of
still
them-
That's what Republican
unregistering
is.
voters.
Yeah.
A third of them will never leave their base. That's
Yeah.
what they're appealing
Yeah, I
to
agree.
today.
I agree.
The QAnon crowd, the Proud Boys, all the
Well,
white nationalism,
the-
the Nazis coming back.
Well, yeah, the nastier elements that you see that's voting in, you know, for Republicans, they weren't so brazen before. They'd always, you know, those elements, many of them probably were always there. Many
Hello?
of them were always there. But I think what the emergence of Trump, who nobody liked in New York and other places, we saw him as for what he was, a charlatan. And a joker, but he was able to really sort of enliven those elements that have always been out there in the Republic. You
And he helped them to make money.
These professional haters and
And
others.
what did he do to all those Republicans who were
Right?
running?
Absolutely.
He made them look like
I think this was always coming. So maybe we agree. I think this was always coming. I think those elements were always there. And I think
Was that saying
the
for-
way the Republican
Well,
Party
look how
often
we
had
come out
talked
of
about issues and so on, all this stuff was always there. And he was able to come along and talk to these people who feel that they've been aggrieved, that they're aggrieved, and enliven these people and get them, you know.
But we can't settle for that.
I mean, he doesn't believe. The other thing with Trump is why he's so troubling a figure. I don't think he believes any of the things. I don't think he's ever believed any of those positions. I mean, he wasn't anti-abortion. He's supported privately and publicly giving money to what's the
Planned Parenthood.
Planned Parenthood, any other organization. He's here. He was swanning around it as one of the New York Times reporter. She writes, Maureen Dowd, she writes on Sunday, she said he's been swanning around cocktail parties in Manhattan all along. He doesn't believe any of that nonsense. He was able to just get these people who do believe all that stuff to coalesce behind him. That's what he was able to
Don't
do.
you
And he
think
did it
he's-
successfully. Probably the only successful thing he's ever done. Certainly not, you know, all these building projects and all this other stuff. People talk about him as if he's some important developer. It's a joke. I mean, you know.
It's nothing funny about Trump.
Yeah.
He's the biggest con in New York.
What is
The
incumbent
first
upon us?
job he did was the hotel on 42nd Street. And he was smart enough to get everybody
The-
else to invest
By
in
the Vanderbilt,
Hyatt Hotel.
the Grand Hyatt, yeah.
Hyatt Hotel. Look what he
Vanderbilt
did with that.
Grand
He
Central
amazed
area.
people how he got everybody to invest in it. He didn't put up a dime. One thing in real estate and development is you use other people's money.
OPM. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that
well-
goes well on Wall Street, because they're the real. This is the slickest town. If you're privy enough to succeed here in the con game, which is Wall Street, you know, selling stuff, you can make $1 billion.
Now,
And that's
what would you say
Putin-
to, let's say, the young college graduate coming out of our community and our family at this point as to what they should be doing, what direction they should be moving in? Recognizing what you said, recognizing and understanding the game that's been run on us, moving forward. What do I say to my college graduate son and daughter as they begin to step into adulthood and perhaps begin to manifest their own political ideals? How do we advise them?
After all this time and watching all these mistakes that we've made, you stay true to what your calling is. You have to find out what your purpose on the planet is. That's what I would say to any of them.
Do
That's
they
what
even know what the Nguzo Saba is? If that's what we're talking
Well,
about,
that's what we
being true
should
to our
teach them.
principles?
That's how I'm presenting all these problems to us, whoever watches this, the Gilchrist experience. I'm relating to people my experience every week, what I'm going through.
It's worth it for
The
our
80
children to
years on the
know
planet.
what Winston Gilchrist went through 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
I went through
Our
what
children
everybody
need to-
else went through.
Our children
those
need to know
changes.
that, because there are children who would say, that crazy old man, he don't even know what he's talking about, because they don't know what you went
I've made
through.
all the mistakes.
And we haven't told enough of our children. They don't know our history, a lot of our children.
Wow.
You know, and this is something I think I mentioned it before.
I've been guided by God.
Well,
That's my salvation.
perhaps
I mean, I've gone through too much stuff to know that I'm in charge. I'm not in charge. I just went through a near-death experience almost a year ago now. It's 2 months away. And I didn't know what happened. I mean, I had a stroke, a fellow hit my head, and I didn't remember a thing. My wife suffered the most from it. I woke up in the hospital. What's going on, God? I mean, what am I doing here? I don't know. Well, she has to tell the story. She went through all the pain. I knew nothing was wrong.
Was that the first stroke you've ever had?
Yeah. I've had a mini stroke, but that was because I was mad at a couple of people, and that happened in church.
Well-
So I know I had a mini stroke in church because I was mad at somebody.
It was an epiphany, huh?
there's a
Yeah, and God said you don't bring nasty to church.
Right.
well, that
I mean, so I've suffered from being, out of line. And every time I've done anything wrong against, if I wasn't a good guy, I pay for my bad mistakes.
is religion and the knowledge of theosophical beliefs, are those things part of what has been neglected in how we raise up our children? Do our
Yeah.
children, here we go in 2022, have sufficient basis in knowledge of self, knowledge of their creator, to prepare them for the battles ahead? And if they haven't, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa.
You see on the Gilchrist experience, I always say, the God in me loves the God in you. And people bypass that. But there's a God in every individual.
Some people don't dare say that in public.
What?
Particularly if you are in a room full of people who may be other than Christian, who may be right-wing Republicans, some people don't dare talk about God when they're in public.
Yeah.
And we know
Well,
some of our peers who have been silenced
those
in
are the
some
people who
ways.
don't know God.
Well,
Well, that's a difficult story.
amen, Rev. You're calling me to church now, and I have to say
well,
amen.
it's
Well,
true.
I think the
That's
world has
true.
changed. I'm sure we would agree. The world has largely changed in such a way that I think I know people who were 50 and under. Many people who never, and many of them are people of color. Some of them are people of color who are unchurched, never grew up in a. Very interesting.
That's the majority in our community
But that's
now.
well, it's just it's surprising, but
Well-
that's the way the
Well, you
world is
gotta-
right now.
You got to be beaten up a couple times to know.
Well, I don't.
I've been through so many near-death experiences. I know God.
Well, you
is
now
real.
realize you're not the captain of your fate, F-A-T-E.
No, I've been through
and to
enough.
what you're saying, well, how will the children know? As a wag once said, actually, it wasn't a wag. He was another character. Who was prime minister. When someone asked him what was the purpose of the destiny or life's purpose for British people, I think it was Harold Macmillan, a prime minister in the 60s, said, well, you'll have to check with your archbishop about that, speak to your archbishop about that. So basically, it's people used to get, this stuff used to be transmitted to folks through their faith, their community, the village that they're raised in, and elders in their communities. I think a lot has changed. I don't think it's for the better what's happened. So, you hear parents saying to their offspring, or about their offspring, I should say, that they'll find out about religion, or they'll find their faith as they get older. Well, how are you going to find your faith as you get older? Usually people have something to work with or start with, or now, or they'll know, and generally they'll know how to react to that, or embrace it, or question it, or in some cases, in many cases, dismiss it. Right, so you're having people start out with really no faith.
Again, when if it happens, I was raised in the church. I mean, I started going to church and I was on my mama's knee at 1 year old.
That was the norm years
church.
ago.
And that was the 40s, and when we had real church. Can you imagine the 40s in church?
Well, you have real church even today, though.
But I mean,
I'm sure you go to real church.
I watched Reverend Walron on television.
You mean you don't attend?
No, not now. My church is closed.
Well, they're starting to open.
I videotaped convent for 16 years.
Convent is open
And
now.
I'm in church now.
First
with
Corinthian
Reverend
is
Sharpton.
open.
My pastor is Reverend Sharpton.
Well, he doesn't have a church.
That
The
is
rally
church.
functions as a kind of the
That
Saturday
is
morning
church.
is a wonderful rally. It functions as
That
a kind.
is church.
Well, not the traditional church that
Not
we
the
know.
traditional.
It's a black church.
But what Reverend
It's
Sharpton
black
teaches-
teaches,
gonna
folks.
hear a
I would
word
agree, and
from
it's a
the Lord?
wonderful rally,
You
but
wanna
it's not church.
Have you
in
been
and of,
there?
I've
lately?
never to the Saturday morning rally, but I
Well,
watch the
then you
Saturday
don't- you
while
haven't
I'm
been to
working on
church.
Saturday mornings. I watch the which you wonderfully film for them. I watch the rally on Saturday morning, but I get it on the Impact channel. Then sometimes in the evening I watch
You
the
don't
week
get the
before.
whole thing on. You got to come
Well,
sit
yeah.
in church.
It's about 2 hours
but
on Saturday
again,
morning.
part
yeah.
of what it reminds us of is that there are certain values, certain points of view that our parents passed on to us. And I was painfully reminded of this by my son coming home one day, and in a secular sense, he was asking me something about the W.B. Du Bois, and I'm assuming that school is teaching him about W.B. Du Bois, and he's saying that they never taught me, Daddy, because they thought you taught me, and so nobody taught him about W.B. Du Bois. And we're thinking that other people are going to teach our children. In a religious context, the same thing is that are other people, do they have our well-being, our children's well-being in mind, that they will teach our children those ideas of religion that will strengthen the community, those ideas of religion that would drive us to continually improve ourselves. Does anyone care about the younger generation enough to teach them if we, as their elders, have not taught them? And that's an ongoing challenge. Who is going to teach our children what they need to know if we haven't done it? We cannot depend upon a secular board of education. We cannot depend upon people outside of our community who may have other interests.
But I hear this often, and the way it's often.
The problem with organized religion is that there's a devil in the church. That's where the devil really lies. The devil's in the church. That's one thing you have to be careful of.
The devil has been everywhere.
Yeah.
Those of us who believe that
Well,
there is
God's
a devil,
everywhere.
the devil is everywhere. You could quote, what
as
is
a
it,
human
Ephesians,
being,
the devil is a
you're given
raging lion,
you're
seeking whom
given
he
a
may
human
devour.
kit of a choice between the God and the devil in you. See, and I've chosen the devil's path a couple of times.
Do we
and
challenge
been
our children to
spanked by
think that and to
God
be ready
when
for that
I went
challenge?
the wrong way.
If the devil and godliness are at once in battle
The good
inside
and
of us,
the
do
light
we
and the
prepare our
dark.
children for that battle?
Well, I was trying to refer to, you just mentioned something earlier about, well, who's there to teach our children? I mean, we're doing I'm an oral historian. We're doing a whole oral history project. We're doing it via podcast, and we're doing it through other means. I work in the arts, doing local community, regional theater, and so on. There are ways to do it, and there have always been ways to do it. I mean, you can't expect. I'm a big booster of public schools. They have the biggest challenge. They have to take everybody. I mean, I've attended public, private, and parochial school. So I've done all a tripartite educational thing. Public school for a short while.
You were born in 1958?
I was born in Latin America, in Panama. Yeah, in '58. Grew up here. Went to church school.
When did you come here?
Got here in '66. 8 years old.
66?
Yeah. We go over this. We go over this periodically. You and I.
I'm just remembering.
You have me by a generation. So you. Yeah.
I got a son your age.
I am now older than a number of people in my circle. I get people often, too often get my age so wrong. They think I'm a lot younger, but I'll be 64.
Well, me too.
I'll be
Wise old
64. Well, he's the wise old man.
I'm
Prayerfully, I
just
will get there.
I learn something new every birthday.
Prayerfully, I will get there. I mean, my circle, it's cross-generational. So I'm around. I've always been around, a lot of older people, and then also, you have the younger folks that are there as well. So,
But see, it's all according to times that you were born in and where you were born. See, now I tell the story of where I was born and what was happening on the planet when I was born. I was born in 41, April, 1941. Hitler had just taken over all of Europe, and he was about to attack Russia in 41. So, I mean, the rest of the planet was in hell.
Literally a
And
call to arms.
I was born a block and a half, 2 blocks from the Apollo Theater in 1941.
So were you? So that means you were what? At 126 or 127th Street or 124th or 123rd?
Sydenham Hospital.
Yeah.
That's where I was born.
Yeah.
In the middle of Harlem.
Right. Well, when we came here, we still have a place there. We have a presence in Harlem almost 60 years. My grandparents got here. I was raised by my grandparents from the time I was born right through childhood and into early adulthood.
Where, in Harlem?
In the middle of Harlem, in the middle of everything, 123rd Street.
And where?
They called it Uno, Dos, Tres. That street.
Oh, yeah, you told me that.
Yeah,
You told me.
between Lenox and 7th. I even go by
That's
the
a
old
block and a half
avenues.
from
We
where
still
I
have a
was
place
born.
there. Yeah, we still have.
Well, I was born on Manhattan Avenue.
Yeah, the apartment is
Which
now
is-
a condo apartment. I'm on the Upper East Side, but I also am there. My aunt is there, so we've been in that building for just about 60 years, and I've watched so many changes occur.
Yeah.
I mean, from a child,
Well, the
September of
80s
'66
the 80s
arriving
in
here.
Harlem.
What
The
would you say?
80s. And
What would you say to the young black man or woman just out of college who tells you they'd like to live in Harlem and they can nowhere afford the kind of living or the space that you had? And if they come to you, this young person just out of college comes to you for advice in terms of how they direct their lives to get to some sort of
Well, in my family, we have
achievement.
6 generations alive, which is almost arithmetically impossible.
What's your advice to the youngins?
So we have a bunch of people, 46 and under, about 3 generations of people, lots of people. If any of them were to ask me or anybody else, I mean, they've been priced out. You've been priced out. It's just that simple. What you need is affordable housing. You need it throughout the city.
Are there any
everywhere.
solutions in sight that you would?
And the village of Harlem's a different place. I mean, for a long time you had a black congressman there for 73 years representing Harlem proper. You now have a Dominican congressman. Things have changed. You will not get that seat back. So you had it for 73 years. Now you have, a very able Congressman Espaillat, who's there. He supports a lot of the local theater productions that we do. So the community has changed. I think the percentage of African Americans in the village of Harlem now, I think it's 49 or 51%.
We're less than the majority at this point, yeah. Particularly,
Yeah, I thought it was either 49 or 51%.
is that all? I thought we were a good
Things have
80.
changed. I mean, from the time you were there, when you were born in 41, you're going to be 81 this year.
Yeah,
So you were born in
41.
43 or
41.
in 41?
There are young people
41
coming
to
up
81.
41.
in our
Yeah.
families and in our community who cannot imagine what it is to live in a large, majority black community that is supportive of each other and has the sense of community. Some of our young people, they cannot imagine that because they don't see that and they have not seen that. And I
But
feel
I'm
like-
trying to understand when you say that. I mean, African Americans still largely grew up in African American communities. But you're saying are you talking, I mean, nostalgia can be this distorting lens. So let's just be fair and try to be accurate here. I mean, African Americans, like any other groups, grew up largely in the same way perhaps Italians and
Homogeneous
Greek Americans and Hispanic Americans. They largely grew up in homogenous neighborhoods, for the most part. I mean, people can live, in a lot
But
of.
you tried being in Harlem during the crack epidemic, when they were burning buildings for the insurance money. You tried being here then and surviving.
Well,
When you were exposed to, that was planned genocide.
but I mean, before crack, you had the heroin epidemic.
But it wasn't
and you
planned
had that
genocide.
for decades.
The
And
planned genocide of the 80s was completely different than any other drug.
I'm
All
a
right.
bit, well, we're going
Where
to a
were
whole
you in
other
the 80s?
subject now
Where
because
were you in the 80s?
yeah, I'm a bit wary about when we talk about planned genocides. I
I
think
can prove it.
You don't
I
think the
think
mafia
that-
is that intelligent?
I don't
can
think
prove it.
The mafia is that intelligent that they would plan the influx
Well,
of
it's not a
drugs?
matter
See,
of intelligence.
have
I
you
think
seen-
that things. I
I'll
just.
give you a program to
I'm
watch
sort of a
to show you how it
deconstructor of
started.
conspiracies. I don't think those conspiracies are that easy
The
and that
CIA
well put
brought
together.
drugs
I
to
think that there are people who are hostile to our communities who've allowed drugs to be poured in and have allowed any number of things. Gentrification, redlining of communities.
good at killing
You
each
can
other.
name it, all sorts of environmental racism. All of that you could put down to a kind of structural racism.
Let me tell you
but
something.
I also think that people.
Let me say something to your son.
Go ahead, Pop.
I'm all ears. You're my elder, and I will always
In
give you the respect due
1960s.
to you.
In the 1960s, when they got, what was that program that they brought to Harlem?
Urban renewal, they would
It was
refer to it
called
as
something
Negro
else. I
removal.
forgot the name of it.
Are
but it
you
was-
act?
How you act?
Yeah.
And all
HAR
those-
hyphen
HARYOU.
HARYOU. Yeah. How you?
Youth opportunities
It was
unlimited.
what was it? HAR hyphen UYOU.
They
Youth
put some
opportunities
money
unlimited.
into the Harlem. They put some money in the Harlem. And they just put it in the Harlem because we know it would fail. Because we didn't trust each other and we wound up stealing most of the money. Because the slicksters got hold of this program and didn't believe it. Didn't.
You're referring to the poverty pimps, the so-called poverty pimps, and
Of course.
yeah.
You got church pimps too.
yeah.
There are those
Yeah.
who would suggest that we have become so much like the slave owners that we are indistinct from them
Materialism.
in terms of our pursuit of
We're
dollars and our
spiritual people.
self-interest.
We have to stick with our faith.
Are we spiritual
And-
people in
yes.
2022?
Yes.
Are we?
Yes.
And this is something
Yes, there
something
are.
that
I would
Brother
say-
Morgan
I would
alluded
say-
to.
yeah.
Less and less of us are going to church. Less and less of us have any
don't
affiliation
need to-
with the
But-
groups
but
that
you
build
can
our
look in the
community.
mirror.
You're exactly correct. But
can look
here's the
in-
thing: you still
Let me
have
give
these.
you a hint. You can look in the mirror and talk to God. You
Yeah.
are the God. There's a God in you. Talk to the God within you.
I'm telling you,
Well-
half of Harlem would say you're a crazy man for what you just said.
I know.
This is the problem. We are not as communally
Because they haven't talked to
united.
themselves in the mirror and look for that God that's within. Because they don't believe it. Because they ran into too many church pimps in their lives.
Well-
They've been bamboozled and cheated and
Well, let's say this:
taken all
if we
met too many
can,
devils in their lives.
let's say this if we can, Brother Gilchrist, that the faith institutions are still strong in all these communities. I mean, sometimes when I walk around the village of Harlem or in many other black communities, some of the only places that they own, not the apartments for the most part, is the church buildings and the church institutions.
That's right.
That's it. That's the principal. You know, if you want to look at principal ownership of property in a black community, it's the faith-based institutions. It's the churches, the temples, the mosques,
National
the
Action
synagogues,
Network.
and so on.
National Action Network.
A
Well, National Action
quasi-religious-
Network is not a church, though. What would you call it?
Quasi-religious.
Yeah.
I've been there
Reverend Shelton-
24 years, and it's church to me.
Well,
And every time Rev calls me minister, I
I will
feel
defer
blessed.
to you.
Colloquially,
So,
yes.
But what it is, it's
You hear Rev
an
call me minister?
Oh, yeah.
I'm blessed.
yeah, it's an organization driven
I'm
by,
blessed.
compelled by Dr. King's vision, and
We're disciples
they're
of
Christian.
Martin.
Church
They're
values.
Christian.
We're disciples of
Absolutely.
Martin Luther King.
Absolutely.
Most
Where
of
we
Harlem,
judge people by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. And that especially should be in mind when you talk about black people. You have to judge them by
no
the
doubt.
color, by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin.
But all I was saying is
That's
that
the way we should treat black people. Because
you'll get
everybody
no
that
arguments
looks
from
black
us.
ain't
You'll get
black.
no arguments from this quarter.
All right? So you have to be careful how we treat each other.
Absolutely.
yes.
And if you're a
That's-
spiritual
yeah.
being, if you
Another
have any
subject,
God
yeah.
consciousness in you, you treat other people like you want to be treated.
Can you have this God conversation, let's say in a group of 20-year-olds in
Well,
our
you
community?
see
and-
Lindsey Graham asking a black woman like something's wrong with him. He don't go to church but 3 times a year. I start off with that.
Right.
And I'll give you a little Trumpism. Tell you the problem with Trump and tell you why Trump gets his money. All right, play item 2. Is that the one I want to hear? It's a long one, but I'm showing you Deutsche Bank.
Deutsche
Deutsche
Bank.
Bank.
Deutsche Bank.
German bank.
And this is the Russian mafia bank. This is Putin's bank. And Putin's lending money to Trump. That's why they're such good friends. $2 billion to the family.
Was that the story you were telling me about?
Yeah.
With,
And
Justice-
there's a Supreme Court Justice, Anthony Kennedy.
you said his
involved in
son
this.
is
Anthony
an attorney.
Kennedy.
He's
who
a lawyer
retired
for
early because his son is part of the Deutsche Bank.
Deutsche Bank, yeah.
Now this is in this roll-in. Now run the roll-in for me.
We go to the videotape.
The explosive New York Times report on the tax situation of U.S. President Donald Trump is raising some uncomfortable questions for Germany's largest lender, Deutsche Bank. Namely, why did Deutsche Bank loan Mr. Trump $2 billion at the same time other banks, including all U.S. lenders, were not willing to do so? And while Deutsche Bank may be handling those loans, we cannot say tonight who or what is behind that money. In other words, we don't know who owns the debt of U.S. President Donald Trump. And adding to this puzzle is the role played by the son of a former U.S. Supreme Court Justice. Justin Kennedy, son of former Justice Anthony Kennedy, was a division head and contact for Donald Trump at Deutsche Bank. Kennedy was close to the then future president at the same time that he was lending money to Mr. Trump. Now, the optics of this are horrible for Deutsche Bank, so bad that author and political scientist Norman Ornstein tweeted yesterday, "If I were Deutsche Bank executives who gave loans to Trump when no one else would, including Anthony Kennedy's son, I would be very, very nervous right now." All right, let's speak with the man who voiced that opinion. Norman Ornstein joins me. He's a political scientist at the American Enterprise Institute. He's also an author and editor at The Atlantic. It's good to have you on the day, Mr. Ornstein. So, do you think Deutsche Bank executives, do they have something to hide?
We don't know what they have to hide, but as you say, the optics are terrible, but it's more than just the optics. We know from these tax returns that Donald Trump was in dire financial shape, had very few assets and deep, deep liabilities, was concealing information about those assets. And if you look at some of these tax returns, the only logical explanation when he came up with bundles of cash and was buying golf courses all over the place, golf courses which now in many cases are hemorrhaging losses, it looks like money laundering. Where did that money come from, and what role did Deutsche Bank play in facilitating all of that? And why was a reputable bank lending huge sums of money to somebody widely viewed everywhere as a significant credit risk? And then you throw in something else that you alluded to but didn't quite get to. Mm-hmm. Justice Anthony Kennedy retired prematurely, and to enable Donald Trump to pick a much younger individual, and that younger individual was Anthony Kennedy's protege, Brett Kavanaugh. Very controversial and something that's altered the nature of the Supreme Court. What was going on there, given the personal relationship and business relationship, apparently, between the younger Kennedy and Donald Trump through Deutsche Bank? There's an awful lot here to unpack and unravel.
Wow.
And a lot of it looks bad.
Yeah, it does look bad. And I mean, it sounds like, if I'm understanding you right, that, I mean, at least the optics here, it looks like that there could be a connection between Justin Kennedy's relationship with Donald Trump, loaning Donald Trump money, and the decision by Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy to retire early. In other words, in exchange for loan money, there was a guarantee of the ability to impact the future of the Supreme Court. Am I understanding you correctly?
We don't know. We can only infer things from this, but none of it looks good, and it's all tied together. And considering that Deutsche Bank has had other issues, including Russian money coming through and being laundered in some fashion, we can connect some dots here that don't sound good. It requires a lot of investigation, and that's why I tweeted first that if I were those executives at Deutsche Bank, I'd be nervous right now. And then I followed with, it's probably time for the Southern District of New York, the federal prosecutors who've been investigating some of these areas, and the district attorney and attorney general in the state of New York to depose young Mr. Kennedy and perhaps begin to get to the bottom of it.
Well, that's what's at issue right now, isn't it? Who owns these loans that Donald Trump has to pay back, more than $400 million US? I mean, we don't know, but maybe some executives at Deutsche Bank, maybe they know.
Well, one would think that, you can follow, tongue in cheek, I said we need to follow the rubles, but we don't know for sure. I will tell you that a very good journalist associated with the New Yorker, Adam Davidson, who wrote a long piece about connections with Azerbaijan and money laundering going through some of the figures there, the miscreants there, which apparently indicated a great interest in golf courses, might have some ties here as well. And of course, we also have reason to believe that Trump, in decades past, had gotten loans from Russian sources. If you look at the president's relationship with Vladimir Putin and the actions that he's taken, including the promise to withdraw troops from Germany that serve the interests of Mr. Putin and Russia, we have even more to be concerned about. Our Constitution has in it two clauses that we call emoluments clauses.
Right.
The main one is to prevent a major figure, especially a president, from getting anything of value from a foreign interest in a way that might compromise America's national interest and its foreign policy. There's an awful lot here that we have questions about that are vital to America's national interest.
Well, Letitia James has been speaking on this and not getting much support because I guess some people were afraid she was going to run for governor, and that might have upset their own apple carts. But her persistence in this is something that is more than admirable. She has said that there is illegalities happening with the monies that have been going in and out of the Trump corporations and that Trump building headquarters that he has. And she has said this is something that if we don't deal with it now, the monster becomes larger and more difficult to deal with down the road. She has been consistent and persistent, and we have to understand that the woman ain't crazy. She may be kind of new to national politics, but she sees what some of us have been closing our eyes to because we don't want to believe that an American president has been culpable of fraud and culpable of basically doing things with other international leaders in ways that enrich him and his pals as opposed to acting in the interest of the United States.
I've been saying this about Putin and Trump the 4 years he was president. I've been arguing with Leroy and Graham about this for the last 4 years. Yeah, the Hillary haters. I mean, they're not here today. I purposely put this together for them. Graham, you wait till you see this one. And Leroy, you didn't call me today. So that was for my buddies. But see, this is what people don't know about.
Yes.
See, this is why I played it. People are looking past and saying, Graham always saying to me, forget about Trump. Forget about Trump.
Most Americans don't know who Letitia James is or what
They
she's
don't
doing.
know what.
Yeah,
But
Letitia
see,
James,
Trump has
the
been
New York
doing this
State
all
Attorney
his
General,
life.
the top
How can anybody
lawwoman
have
here in the
casinos
state,
in
this state?
Atlantic City and not be part of the mafia? What do you think? How long has he been laundering money for the gangsters?
Well, I'm
The
surprised.
Russian-
I'm surprised that Graham would dismiss the reality of what Trump is and what he's about in that fashion, and say, well, it's other issues, or it's Trump. He figures very, very significantly in so much of the stuff that go on, questionable stuff.
Well, I can't speak about it. Yeah, wait till he sees this video. And then he'll have a lot to say.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to have him Skype in, but he got tied up.
Understanding the threat, domestic threats, is an important thing in today's world. There are people and some media big shots who would obscure those threats so we don't recognize and deal with them. This is part of what, again, we have to educate some of our own folks. I'm thinking particularly some of our young folks, because they're going to be inheriting the mess that we've made. You know, years from now, decades from now, I may be gone, but my children and grandchildren are going to be stuck in the mire if I am lazy, if I am foolish, if I think somebody else is going to clean it up. And this is, repeatedly you hear me say this, what about the young folks? Because I think we have let them down, and I think we need to get our act together so that their world will not be worse than the world that
Well,
we
I
have.
think the emphasis should be on this election coming up and fighting for voters' rights. I mean, this is the most important project that I think we should focus on. And I want to bring out the crooks to show us what we should concentrate on. And they're all over. I mean, everybody in the White House isn't the same. No, when we vote, we say we'll take the worst of the two evils.
Half of America probably doesn't know what midterm elections means. And that's the threat.
That's exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
Why we don't vote? It's all going to be the same anyway.
Well, I mean, I think people vote, and then you have those who are indifferent, and they don't vote. And
But we got to get, those are the people we got to get out of the shadows.
Right.
Those are the people that got to wake up. And hopefully some of them watch this. I think I'm reaching a few people. I'm told I am. But this is so vital that we understand the battle is amongst ourselves and how we fight the system.
How do you mobilize morality?
You try, you pray. You look for the God within. You got to, you know.
Well, we have to teach morality,
Yeah.
and then once we teach it, hopefully our children will act on it.
You got to teach people how to be nice, how to be human, not nice, how to be human. Because you can be nice for your own purposes. And materialism is our biggest problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's materialistic.
How many
things.
pastors in Harlem would dare say that materialism or capitalism is sinful? How many pastors actually have the gonads to stand up and make that kind of a statement?
It's not sinful. It's
You don't think materialism is sinful?
We're all materialistic to a
Oh,
certain point.
okay.
But extreme materialism.
Extreme.
You don't
okay.
need but so much money.
So the $1,000 suit for the pastor collection, that might be okay, but if it's a $1,200 suit,
Like I
then
say,
we
you
cross
got the
line?
devil in the church. They're the ones with the most
Where do we
money.
draw the line? You know, when we say we don't need a daycare for our little ones in the community because the government should do that, but then we say, well, you know what? Maybe our children, our mothers of these young children shouldn't be in the workforce. They should be staying home with the children. So we're no longer supporting the ideas of advancing our community, and are we doing the things that are
You
immoral?
have to pay for your own sins. You know, it's sinful to do a lot of things, and people know what's right from wrong.
And if I say the people north of 116th Street are paying for New York City's sins, am I being an extremist?
Perhaps, to whoever's listening.
Well, if you're starting in Harlem, you say north of 110th, right?
110th, you're right.
North of 110th. But in fairness to I was telling Winston the other day, in the Roman Catholic tradition, we have a phrase in Latin. It's labora y orat. You work and you pray. Just don't pray. You work and you pray. See? And people also, when we pray, people also have to want to come.
But see, you've had the fortune of traveling. I've had that experience. You know, I've been to different countries. You know, a lot of black people need to travel. I know my grandson, once he got to Europe and saw how white people are so much different there than they are here. I mean, it's an eye-opener. I spent 67 in Copenhagen, and I mean, that was the 60s. 60s were heaven everywhere you went. You know, during the Flower Children days, you know, all that other stuff.
How long were you there for in Denmark?
8 months.
Were you in the armed forces then?
No, I was a civilian.
Oh, it was after the army. Okay.
I was after my
You
war.
were a CV. You were a civilian.
4 years I spent in the Marine Corps. I went the other way. I
It's
went
funny.
to the Far East.
We mentioned Dr. Ben earlier because there are some of the things that he had said about some of our young people need to go to Africa and spend 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years in order to get an intelligent perspective on the world, because in New York City you miss out a whole lot. And when he dared to suggest that, there were some people who looked askance at him like, why is he talking about sending our people to Africa? They thought they were fearful, you know, that he was going to be repeating something that was being said in the 1920s.
No, well, I think Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark and many of the elders and even some who are alive today, such as Dr. Jeffries and others, they've taken many groups of young people to Africa.
But they've been
many
criticized
times.
sometimes, which is what's painful to me.
Yeah, but when we keep saying that, and I just wanted to just bring up the rear here, you would keep saying something about, well, how are people to learn? I'm obsessed with how people can learn, and they need to learn. But you used to have, and you still do in some communities, these informal places, after school, community groups, even, you know, study groups within churches and so on, and faith-based places, where you had these lectures. I mean, Dr. Ben lectured in a lot of places.
Yes.
Yeah, so there are places, and there are things that can be done. Alambi Brath, who was an extraordinary Pan-Africanist who for decades had a series of Friday night learning programs where he brought people from all over to Harriet Tubman School on West 127th Street, 127th Street. And I keep telling people, you had all of these organizations and groups that were doing a lot of things.
What's left?
But anybody can take this up and continue to do this.
Can you and I build a curriculum?
Well,
do
you know
it,
what,
'cause
you're
it's
talking
needed
about
to be
building
done.
a curriculum.
Well,
That's another story. You have curricula that's out there already, but I'm saying, I'm thinking now more in terms of community-centered events where people can come. I mean, you know, what many of the wonderful works that NAN do, National Action Network, Winston is involved with NAN for a long time. You have your legal justice program on Monday nights there,
Yeah, legal
and you
night.
have and still you have other programs
Youth programs
elsewhere.
also.
Well, yeah, well, it's you know, they do a big outreach for youth, so they try to get a lot of young people. They get not as many as they should, but you know, so you have all these things, and you still have spaces, and you have these again, the churches you control. You don't control a lot of the other places. You control those houses of worship. So let's act like,
Well, we have to get.
you know, that they're there as resources. I
Well-
mean, you know that. Many of the lectures you went to, and by extension, I went to as well, in those
church
communities, whether in Brooklyn, whether in Manhattan, or whether else in any of the other 3 boroughs, many of them took places in churches. So, I mean, all these things, what we often do is we treat it as if, oh, this was going on at this point, and in the 80s, this was going on in the 70s. There's no reason why all these things should continue.
Well,
And there's nobody stopping you, and you have agency, you can do it. When I say you, I mean the collective, you know.
You mean we?
Yeah, the we.
You have to realize the last 3 years have been very difficult.
Certainly,
It's been a test of our stamina,
COVID has tested us.
tolerance, and just like the patience of Judge Jackson and what she's been dealing with the last 3 days.
3 days, 2 more days to go.
And you see
Far.
where a black woman, solid, and have to go through the beginning of a knucklehead like Lindsey Graham,
Right.
and the other.
As I said, though, Winston, she's a shoo-in.
But
She will get there.
But
She
how
will get to that.
humiliating is that for her to go through this?
Well, it's
I've
what
lo- how
confirmation
much have
hearings
you-
have become.
No, but you
It's
can't
what they've
just
become in the
bypass
last
that.
30 years or
You
so.
can't just say that will be.
I pray
It's the
for her.
nerve of these
She
people.
will do well. I mean, she can
But why
defend
should she have
herself.
to sit through Lindsey Graham and the rest of them?
Because some of
When
us
they're
got lazy in the
dead
last
wrong.
election.
They're true demons. There's the devil there. No doubt
Well,
about
as I
it.
said, what you're seeing is a series of performative,
For the QAnon. Now realize
artworks
who they're
with
appealing
Ted Cruz
to.
and Lindsey Graham.
Watch what their politicians
Raking her over the
running them
coals.
to. QAnon. I wish I had to roll on a QAnon. You see how nutty these people are. And that's a good 20% of the
Yeah,
Republican
absolutely.
Party.
That's where we are in the country right now. That's where we are.
But nobody realized how bad it is till you listen to this and it's explained to you what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not racists. They're politicians that are racist. I mean, and you don't see the racism. You think that's Lindsey Graham. No, he's a nut anyway. We just bypass that.
That
and
nut has thousands of
simplify it.
people who voted for him.
Yeah, he has hundreds of thousands of people vote for him every 6 years. He's a senior senator from
Because
South
it's
Carolina.
set up. He's making money.
Republican
He's
senior
trained-
senator.
He's supported by look at the judges that were appointed by,
Obama.
I forget the name of the group. Oh, we got 30 seconds for Manhattan. But again, I say to you, the God in me loves the God in you. I hope you heard some spiritual energy today and showed you who the devils are.
Tell the children what's happening with that Supreme Court nomination so that they
And-
understand.
And being a devil is like being greedy, self-centered, selfish, and all those negative instruments that we all have and partake in. But you stay to the positive side of your God-centeredness, peace and love. That's for Manhattan. We go on. I got a minute more for the Bronx.
Really? Oh.
You know, give us a closing about Nan. Nan's coming up the
The National Convention is coming up.
6th through the 9th of
It-
April.
The Sheridan 51st and 8th, I think it is.
53rd, yeah.
call. What's
And
the
you
number?
had Jesse Jackson's Wall Street project there the last 2 days.
Ah.
I mentioned that to you last week,
Oh,
Winston.
yeah. Forgot
That
about
took place on this past Monday, 21 March through 22 March.
Okay. I'm
That was at
sorry
the
I didn't-
Sheraton.
I
He
didn't-
normally does that. Those
That's why I was in
that
town?
Wall Street project normally takes place during the President's weekend, but he pushed the date back because of the concerns about COVID.
All right. Yeah. Power to the people.
Peace.